everyone. This is your Rockin' Realtor, Eve Kim from Atlanta, Georgia. And today we will discuss the top 3 buyer myths. Myth number 1, a lot of buyers think that they do not need down payment when they get a down payment assistance program. And this is absolutely false. You don't need down payment usually when you get the programs. However, if you're buying a property, you will have some costs that you need to pay prior to closing. So let's talk about those costs. The first cost is your earnest money, also known as your deposit. And in the real estate industry, you are required to pay usually 1% down. That is typical. You can pay less or you can pay more, but the typical amount is 1% down. So for example, on a $100,000 house, you are required to put $1,000 down in earnest money. So you will need that money in order to put an offer down on your home. Another thing you'll need is to pay for your inspection. And usually to pay for an inspector will cost you between $300 and $500. Depends on the size of the home. So that's another expense that you will have to pay before closing. The third thing you will need to pay for is your appraisal. And this cost is usually $500 and $600 or $650 if you need a rush appraisal. So these are the 3 costs that you will be required to pay as a buyer, even when you get the down payment assistance programs. So please keep those in mind. And we're going to talk next about myth number 2. Myth number 2, a lot of buyers think that they have to pay for their agent's commission, which is absolutely false. The seller involved in the sale is actually the person who pays for the commission. They pay for the commission on both sides of the deal. 3% typically to the listing agent and 3% to the selling agent, which is actually the buyer's agent. So the listing agent is the one who lists the house, and the selling agent is the one, that would be me, if I'm working with you as a buyer, who brings the buyer. So this is awesome news for you because you're not required to pay for anything. The seller pays for all of the commission. Myth number 3. A lot of buyers get a little confused about what the seller has to pay for. Typically speaking, a buyer will expect the seller to pay for things like closing costs and also leave the appliances in the home. They tend to think that the seller will pay for repairs, things of that nature, when actually the seller is not required to pay for any of those things at all or to leave the appliances in the home. The seller is simply selling his or her home, and in many cases, they want to sell it as is. So, as a buyer, you need to be aware of the fact that a seller does not have to pay closing costs, so you may have to pay all of the closing costs. Hopefully, your agent will negotiate so that the seller does pay some closing costs, but it's not required. Also, the washer and dryer does not have to be included. Of course, we want that to be included, so we are going to try to negotiate that too. And some of these other things that you would think a seller would pay for, but actually they're not required to. So in those cases, you'll need a wonderful, professional, and experienced agent to negotiate on your part in order to get those things that you want the seller to provide for you. But that is myth number 3. The seller does not have to pay your closing costs or leave things in the home for you or make any repairs. So leave that up to your agent to negotiate on your behalf. Thank you for listening, and please like, share, comment, make some comments, and I'll be glad to answer your questions. You can also call me at any time, 404-604-8568. Again, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.